course, going to be coming in the next few minutes. Today, we are doing a webinar on Credit 101 presented by Mark Thomas. And before we get started, let me give you some information. Yes, I am not Owista Atkins. My name is Louis Porter Jr. I'm the marketing coordinator for the Native Learning Center. And for any questions you might have, I'm going to be running the session for us today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask questions in our chat box. So if this is your first time, here's some more additional information for you. And a disclaimer, of course. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that may be applicable. How to interact with us during this presentation? Please use the hand tool. You can use raise hand, agree, disagree, and any other situations you might need. Next up, if you look at our screen here, you'll see that all the presentation information is available here for download in our file section. Today's survey, when we present it at the end of the webinar, will be presented in this little area. And our chat box, as you can see, is to the right of the main screen where you can get all your information. So with that, let me introduce our speaker for today. Our instructor today will be Mark Thomas. He's the Executive Director of the Indian Dispute Resolution Service Incorporated. Thank you so much, and I will be turning it over to you.
Okay, all righty. Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me. My name is Mark. It's Thompson, but that's okay, Louis. It's totally fine. But everybody will know it. I'll say it a bunch before the webinar is over. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Let me just get my window open, and it should be popping up on the screen, and we will roll on. So first, I want to welcome everybody. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day, and I hope you guys are in the right place. Today we're going to be talking about credit, how to build it, how to maintain it, how to fix it if it's gone bad, and hopefully make sure that you guys don't get into trouble along the way. Just real quick, who we are and who our organization is. I work for an organization, Indian Dispute Resolution Services. We're based out here in California. We do dispute resolution, but we also have a program called the Acorn Project, where we provide technical assistance and training in small business and financial literacy, just like we're doing today. Our website for that project is nativebiz.org, and there's my website. There's my email address, excuse me, and you'll also see my email address as well here. This is my information. I'm the executive director here at IDRS, and so if you guys ever need to reach out, all of the services that we provide are totally free of charge. So let's get into the presentation. Don't want to delay, want to allow as much time as possible for you guys to ask questions and all that good stuff. So today, what are some of the things that we're going to be talking about in this program? What are some of the things we're going to be learning? Here's what we're focused on today. Why learning about credit is important, right? We want to make sure that, hey, why are we even here? And why are we learning about this? We're going to find out about credit scores, credit reports, how they're different, how they're, how one influences the other. Also going to learn where we're going to get each of these. So where we can find our credit report and where we can find our credit score. We're also going to find out how we generate the credit score, you'll learn that it's just an estimation. We don't know exactly, but we're going to find some, by learning about how the credit score is generated, that will give us some good examples of how to improve our score and how to maintain our score when we get it built to the level that we want it. And then the last topic, I'm hoping to get to today is just quickly talk about a little bit about protecting ourselves from would-be identity theft. It's a big thing that's been going on with breaches in these online databases, all kinds of different stuff. And so we're going to talk a little bit about something called a credit freeze, and that'll be at the end of the presentation. So, all right, so let's get going. I like to have a little bit of fun with this, with my credit presentation. So you'll see I have some of my my lyrics here, and this is Shania Twain, if you guys do not know who she is. And she has a song called Ka-Ching, and I throw up some lyrics that talk about the section we're going to be talking about next. And so from Ka-Ching, we've created us a credit card mess. We spend the money that we don't possess. Our religion is to go and blow it all. So it's shopping every Sunday at the mall. Isn't that's really, you know, what's our society has become, kind of a consumer society. In some ways, that's good. It provides us a very prosperous life here in the United States. But sometimes it's tough, especially when we buy more than we have the ability to pay for. So let's go through a little bit of, you know, what's the importance of credit and what we do with it and how we get to it. Um, this is coming. These cartoons are, if you guys are familiar, this is a famous cartoonist from New Mexico, Ricardo Cate. And he designed a lot of these cartoons for OESTA's Building Native Communities curriculum. And that's a curriculum that we've been teaching here at IDRS for many, many years. We highly recommend it. And Building Native Communities is all about how you can increase financial literacy. It goes through a number of different categories, including looking at banking, looking at budgeting, focuses on credit, but then also lending and how you know, how lending decisions are made. So I would encourage, if you ever see that class come up, if it comes into your area, if they deliver it online here at the Native Learning Center, be sure you take it, because learning about the way that you know, your whole financial life is very important to not only just maintaining credit, but you know, just you know, how you invest, you know, how you save, how you are a good consumer. All those things are involved with good financial literacy. So we'll talk about, you know, what credit is, and basically credit is just extending somebody the ability to borrow money. And when you're able to do that, a lot of times it creates growth. It creates growth in you know, our economy. So in this example, you have Ray's laundromat, right? He is borrowing money, and there's going to be obviously he has to pay back that money. There's going to be a cost to borrowing that money, right? We call that cost interest. But by allowing him to do that, by not waiting and saving up that money, he is able to accelerate the growth that he is able to do. He's able to buy a business today, and doesn't have to wait, right? And we can see this not only just in this business context, but we can see this in personal decisions as well, right? Yeah, we could save up and buy a car for cash, but you know, if we don't have a job, you know, and if we had a car, we could get to our job. It makes it very important that we have the ability to buy that car now, right? We're going to have much more growth in our own economic scenario, our own economic lives, if we're able to get to that job, than having to save up, right? And to buy the car, right? If we can buy the car now, I think you guys get the point on that. So credit can be very important in your own economic life, in growing and being able to utilize things, and utilize you know, being able to buy things now that you could utilize you know, in your life. So you know, some of the advantages, right? You get it now. There's convenience when you are buying, you know, not having to wait, not having to save money and put it away. Sometimes, depending on how you borrow that money, You can build your credit score. Like we just mentioned with the car, it may be required. Maybe there's no way to be able to buy something without credit. The cost is just too big. You would have to be saving up for years, and it would be very, very difficult to do that. Sometimes people use their credit to earn points or earn rewards, such as you've probably seen a lot of these different credit cards that are airline cards, or their cash back cards, so people are using their purchases to be able to earn points and earn rewards. However, there could be disadvantages of using credit, right? There's not just the good side, but there's also the bad side. If it could be expensive. There are ways to be able to use credit cards to where you don't have to pay any interest, right? But if you allow those balances to roll over month to month, that can be very expensive and definitely outweighs if you're doing them, if you're using credit cards to get points. If you allow those, allow those balances to roll over, you're going to negate all of those benefits with that high interest you're paying. The ability to be able to buy things because you have that available credit may lead to impulse buying. You may not really consider the economic choices that you're making. One of the things that a lot of financial gurus suggest is to actually pay with cash, because when you pay with cash, there's a psychological response that makes it difficult to be able to hand that money over, right? The fact that you're actually losing that money, right? And that money's not going to be available to you. And you often don't have that when you're using a credit card. You just swipe in the thing and it doesn't feel like anything's changed, right? So there could be some of those psychological detriments to using credit as opposed to using something like cash. You may buy things you can't afford. So not just buying something that you don't need, you may overextend yourself, right? Because obviously if you're spending cash and you don't have the cash to buy something, well, you can't just make the cash come out of nowhere. But with credit, a lot of times you're able to do that even if you don't have the funds to be able to pay the credit card off at the end of the month. And then, of course, if you can't pay and ultimately you can't even maintain the balances, and we're talking a lot about credit cards, but this could be for anything, right? Buying a car, buying a house on credit, anything that you buy on credit, if you're not unable to pay, it could lead to bad credit. So those are things that we want to avoid in this. When we're talking about credit, we want to emphasize those advantages and find ways to disemphasize those disadvantages. And so we talk here. This is another cartoon there from the Building Native Communities from Ricardo Carte. Why do we use credit, right? And what are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves, right? So if we were going through the full Building Native Communities curriculum, what we would be talking a lot about are what's a need or a want. Is it a luxury good? Is this something that I really need to pay this much money for, or can I find it at a lower price if I choose something that may be used or something like that? So there's lots of these different discussions that we have when we make these decisions that we're using a credit. Look at that second item from the bottom. Well, the item lasts longer than the payments to purchase it. We find a lot of times when these car loans that are being made now are getting into where they're 8-9 years long, right? And the car loan, you're always upside down. And what I mean by upside down is you owe more than whatever you borrowed is worth. So in that case of a car loan, right, you owe more to the bank than what the car is even worth. So if you were to sell the car, you can't even pay back the loan, right? You have to actually come out of your savings to actually pay back. And so you want to be thinking about that, right? And maybe choosing that long-term loan is the only way that you can buy that particular vehicle. But the problem is it puts you in a bad situation. So, anytime that you're going to be using credit, I think it's very important to be asking the type of questions that we have here with this gentleman's asking himself, right? Do I have to borrow it, right? Should I save up? Is it going to benefit me more to buy it now, or would it benefit me to save up? Will I still want this if I can't buy it? If I don't buy it right now, am I going to be equally happy to have this later, right? And by asking those questions, just doing those simple things, that's going to make you a good consumer, and a better user of credit. So let's talk a little bit about kind of getting into the fundamentals of what credit is and different types of credit. And one thing, I just like to say here, and I should have said it a little bit earlier, everybody on this call, you guys are all consumers, here in the United States. We've all bought stuff, we've all sold stuff, we've all borrowed, we've probably all had credit cards. So, you know, even though I'm presenting today, don't consider me just the expert. We're all experts, and all of us, we bring a lot of information, and we all have our experiences. Just like Josh had just mentioned, he was talking about how currently he's got $6,000 of debt, and he's maxed out, right? So a lot of us are going to have situations like that, and so what I want you guys to do when we're talking about this through this presentation, I may be leaving something out. If you know about something I'm leaving out, please bring it. That's what we want to do. We're all experts, and we all learn when we share, and we share our experiences. And Josh, so we'll address some of these issues and on what we can do on how to get out of credit card debt in just a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about secured and unsecured credit, and what those terms mean. So generally, when we're talking about credit, generally there's two big types of credit, and I've thrown in a third type of credit here. And so when we talk about credit, let's first talk about revolving credit. And revolving credit means as you use the credit and then pay it off, that credit replenishes. And so what I mean by that is, like, if you had a credit card, you had $1,000 limit on the credit card, you use $500, right? At the end of the month, you only have $500 balance left, right? You can only charge $500. If you were to pay your bill, let's say you paid $250. Well, the next month, how much can you charge? Well, you have now $750, right? That $250 has replenished back to your credit card. It's revolved. So that's what revolving credit. And generally, that's what credit cards are. Credit cards, as you pay them off, that credit comes back to the card. Credit cards, store cards, and store cards that may be like, like if you buy something at a Home Depot or any type of kind of big box retailer that has their own card. That's, and gas cards, but those are really, all those cards are essentially credit cards. The other type of big credit that we generally run into is installment credit. And installment credit is different than revolving credit. As you pay it off, it doesn't replenish, it doesn't revolve. And the way we generally think of those are the types of vehicles that we find that are installment credit are loans. So if you think of an auto loan, right? As you pay down, you buy a truck, and you buy a truck for $20,000, and you've paid off $5,000 of your truck. Well, you don't have, $5,000 there at the Chevy dealership, right? You would have, if you wanted to buy another truck, you would have to go apply for a new loan. And so that's generally how installment credit works. Installments is you're paying off that credit in installments, and then once you pay off the loan, that credit is gone. And if you want additional credit, you have to apply again for a whole new a whole new loan. And I think we can kind of see that a little bit, the difference between revolving credit and installment credits just in the application process, right? We're not applying every single month for a credit card, right? Once we get our credit card and we maintain our credit card, right, we have that credit ongoing. Whereas a loan, every time we want a new loan, we have to apply for it. And just a third one that's a third type of credit that's not as frequent is really maybe a non-installment or service credit. Maybe they give you a little bit of credit, but then you have to pay it in full each month. That's typically would be at maybe like a store provides you, like you've probably seen that, you have a tab that's open and you just buy things throughout the month on the tab and then you settle up, right? But that's a lot. And now with our society, with so many people having credit cards, you don't have to do that. Stores don't have to advance that credit anymore, right? They just expect you to pay on your credit card, and then the credit card a company, Visa, MasterCard, they're the ones that absorb that liability in case that you don't pay. So let's look at, so we've looked at 3 different types of credit. So let's look at how that credit is secured. And what I mean by that is the credit secured or is it unsecured? And secured basically means that is if you do not pay, whoever has loaned you that money can come and get something, right? So, and what they can come and get is generally called collateral, right? And so that's all that a secured credit means, is if you have something that they can come and get, that's that's secured. If there is nothing that they can come and get, then that's unsecured. That's a real easy way. If they can come and get something, it's secured. If they can't come and get something, it's unsecured. And what we generally find for the most part, if we went back one slide, right, up above that revolving credit, that tends to be unsecured, right? There are times when you will have a secured credit card, and that's a special case. But typically, credit cards are going to be unsecured, and then things like loans that are given. Now, there are personal loans that are unsecured, but typically, especially larger loans, if you were to get a loan for a car, if you're to get a loan for a house, that tends to be secured credit, right? So if you bought that truck that we mentioned in the previous example and you stop paying, the car dealership is going to send out the repo man, is going to come back and seize that truck, all right, and then sell it so that they can pay off the debt. So that's the 2 types of credit. So what we're doing here in this first section is we're just kind of getting our feel for what what credit is, and kind of get our terms, because as we go in, we're going to be looking at credit reports and credit scores, and we're going to want to know what those different types of credit is and how we might deal with them, and how they affect the credit report and the credit score. So on to section 2, starting to look at credit reports. So this gentleman is a rapper. His name is D1, and he has a song called Sally Mae Back. Sally Mae Back. And he is a positive rapper. Raps all about positivity, and was talking about, if you guys don't know who Sally Mae is, Sally Mae is one of the largest lenders in the country, providing student loans, right? And he was rapping all about how all the problems he was having with having to pay off his student loans. And of course, he went into, and it says here, graduated, wasn't quite making enough to pay them back, went into default, messed my credit up, check my Equifax. And Equifax is, we're going to find out in just 1 minute, is one of the 3 large credit bureaus in the country. Like I said, I like to have a little bit of fun with the presentation. So I have this cartoon as we're looking at credit reports. Maybe we'd better airbrush this credit report before applying for a loan, right? So we want to think about how can we make our credit reports, how can we make our credit reports look good. And what is the credit report even for? Like why do we even have to consider the credit report? So what is a credit report? So a credit report, all it is a list of all the different types of credit that you are doing, that you are using, that are reported to the different credit bureaus, right? So, and why I mention that as reported to the credit bureaus, because sometimes there is credit that you may be using that is not reported to the credit bureaus. So, like if you were to, go get electricity, right? Oftentimes what they're doing is they're loaning you electricity, right? Because you're paying that bill at the end of the month. So that's a little bit of credit that the utility company is extending to you. And then you pay that. And then, you go on to the next month. But if you were to pull your credit report, most of the time that utility payment is not going to be on your credit report. And so there are times when there's going to be credit that you are essentially getting extended and not paying, and but you're not getting credit for that. And we'll explore some of the other things that don't get on the credit report. But what's a credit report generally used for? One of the main things it's used for is if you're going to make a very large purchase. And I know we're in Indian country, so some folks are living on the res and they're not buying a house, but some people are living off res and are. And oftentimes the credit report is being pulled. And I mentioned there's 3 large credit reports. All 3 of those different credit reports from those different bureaus are being pulled when a mortgage, because a mortgage is such a large purchase. They really want to dive in and see what negative things that you have on your credit report. But other things that people could use your credit report for, maybe a landlord, if you're going to rent a house to you, rent an apartment, the different credit bureaus and other credit scoring agencies, they'll use the credit reports to build a credit score. In some jurisdictions, some employers are allowed to use your credit report. We used to teach a lot in Oregon, and one of the things that Oregon has done is they have passed a law that prevents employers from looking at your credit report unless that you have a certain a very specific need, like if you were a bank teller, right? Then they may the bank could look at your credit report, because, right, if you're a bad credit, there's maybe the belief that you might you might have the ability to take money to satisfy your debts, right? But what was happening is people were looking at the credit report and may deny you to be a truck driver if you have bad credit, right? And that's not really fair, right? I mean, you could have bad credit because you had a health emergency, right? And you have a low credit score, you have these debts, but it has nothing to show about how good of a worker you are. But sometimes employers, they aren't thinking, they just use these kind of risk management techniques. And so some jurisdictions have put in rules that prevent employers from doing that. Other places that use credit reports are insurance companies. I heard a study a while back that somebody that would have gotten they have a clean driving record, but they have a low credit score for whatever reason, right? They may actually get offered higher insurance rates than somebody that has a perfect credit score but may even have a DUI on their credit or on their driving record. The insurance companies, for whatever reason, they believe people with low credit scores are going to cost them more money, right? Maybe they feel it's going to be financial crimes or whatever it is, right? But so it's not just about your credit, right? And trying to buy things or borrow money. There are other reasons why you want to maintain good credit. I see a bunch of comments coming up, so I will break in just to address these as we go. We'll talk a little bit about interest rates, not necessarily different cards. Now, I can pull some stuff up and we can look at some different credit cards, but I will say this, credit cards change so much. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, uh, you know, how your credit standing would affect and your availability for different cards and where to go look for those different cards. So that's how we're going to be thinking about and looking at credit cards, as opposed to looking at the individual cards and saying, hey, you guys should get the a Capital One double cash back card, right? Because everybody's credit is a little bit different, and it's very hard to say, hey, this is the right card for you, as well as people's goals are different. Sometimes people want to maintain a balance for whatever reason. They're buying something that they can't, that they need to pay over a while, but they can't get credit at the store, right? Maybe the store doesn't offer credit, right? So they want to buy it on a credit card. So they want to get a very low interest rate card. Other people may be buying they may be purchasing things and they're paying off their credit or they're paying off their credit card after every month. So what they're looking for is finding cards that provide the biggest rewards, right? And so you can see once you get in there, each person is going to be very unique. So that's why we don't focus on individual credit cards, but we'll definitely talk about how to think about the credit cards and where to go to look for them. And then Josh mentioned a secured credit card. We're definitely going to be talking about secured credit cards coming up in just a little bit. So looking at this, looking at the three credit bureaus, right? So if you guys don't know what the three credit bureaus are, we have Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. So those are the three different credit bureaus, and there are other credit bureaus in this country. There's credit bureaus in little towns. I was raised in a little town in California called Salinas, and we had the Salinas Credit Union, right? And they did much more regional stuff, and they would pull different reports from the bureaus, and then local people could report to the Salinas Credit Union. But when we're thinking and we're talking about this generally being extended credit on credit cards or loans from national lenders, they're generally going to look at these three different credit bureaus: Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And so if we're going and we're thinking about, okay, so we got these three bureaus, we want to find out what information does these three bureaus have about us. So I may be dating myself because I haven't seen these commercials, but for anybody that was watching TV definitely during the 90s and 2000s, these are the freecreditreport.com guys, and they have been in like a fish store, or a fish restaurant. They've been working at the Renaissance Fair. They've been, driving around in their broken down car. And what they would have you do is they would have you get a credit report from freecreditreport.com. And you could go and get a free credit report from freecreditreport.com. But what they would often have you do is give your credit card and from your credit card after 30 days, if you didn't cancel, and that's what they were hoping on, that you wouldn't cancel, they would enroll you in credit monitoring, and I think they would charge you something like $30. There's no need to do that. You can get your credit report totally free, where you do not have to roll in credit monitoring. And instead of free credit report, so I'm going to talk in just a second about getting your actual free credit report from each of these different bureaus. But what I also want to say is, even with credit monitoring, and what is credit monitoring? So credit monitoring is when you have a service and something happens on your credit. So somebody applies for credit. Now, hopefully that person that is applying for credit under your Social Security number is you. But in case it's not, the credit monitoring, they will notify you every time that an application has taken place that's using your Social Security information, right? And for those that don't know, That's generally how our credit system currently works. We'll talk later in the presentation about how you might be able to get credit by not using your social security number. I shouldn't say not by using social security number, but that's not totally built on your credit report. But everything has been built around the social security number. And so that's what I'm so that's what I'm going to be referencing a lot. You will have to use your social security number when you're applying for credit, right? And so so when we're talking about monitoring and getting alerted in case anything bad is happening, or just seeing what's going on with your report, two big services. And of course, Credit Sesame is a little bit is much smaller than Credit Karma is. You guys have probably all seen the commercials from Credit Karma. They've really done Super Bowl ads. They've really gotten out there. If you guys have not seen seen it, let me see if I get out of this, and I'm gonna go and show you my screen here. And let me just do my entire screen. That'll be a little bit easier. And this is Credit Karma. So if you guys have never seen Credit Karma, this is it. Now I have a Credit Karma account. There's my email. Let me log in. Let me show you a little bit what goes on Credit Karma. You can see a little bit of information about me. This will pop up here in a second. I do not know why that is going wrong, but let's see if I can refresh. Credit Karma is apparently offline right now. Did not expect that. Sometimes we have the unexpected happens. But essentially what Credit Karma is it's a service that you enter information about yourself, your social security number, address. Oh, now it's back. And it basically goes and pulls reports. And it provides you totally free of charge your credit score and things that are on your credit report. Okay. As you can see here, it says scores are calculated using the Vantage Score 3.0. And Vantage Score is not the number one credit scoring model. We'll talk about that in just a second. But what it does for you is it gives you something close enough, and it allows you enough information that will allow you to go and work on your score. And then you wonder, how does Credit Karma make its money? And you can see over here on the right hand side of the screen, my little mouse is rolling around it. They basically show you credit cards that you could apply for, right? And American Express is paying Credit Karma to show me this card and says, hey, that you could apply for this card, and this is probably something that you may get approved for. Although this is saying my chance for approval is fair. So I don't know if it's saying that I don't have good credit or I wouldn't have good credit for this card. But that's essentially what Credit Karma does. But Credit Karma has a whole bunch of different stuff that they are offering now. They have really tried to build an all-in-one credit, credit and financial program for folks, right? So besides giving you your credit scores that you can look at and information that's on your credit report, they even have a free tax service. Very limited, right? You're only going to be able to get simple tax returns prepared by them, but they actually do that as well. They'll recommend, as you can see, there's my recommendations here that will tell you, how you can improve your credit. And then they're going to obviously be recommending a lot of different credit cards that are available to me. Different loans that I can get, all that kind of stuff. So, earlier Lynette was asking, hearing about, different credit cards. One of the easiest ways to find out about what credit cards would be right for you is to sign up for Credit Karma. And, by signing up for Credit Karma and putting in all your information, that will they will show you a lot of different cards that may be right for you. And of course, like I said, it's totally free of charge. you are going to have to put your social security number in. That's just, like I said, how our system of credit in the United States is built upon your social security number. But you know, getting signed up here, even if you have bad credit, this is going to allow you to log on and will allow you to learn on how you can start building your credit. So Credit Karma is one of the things that I definitely recommend. All right, so let me get back to my screen here. All right, so so that's Credit Karma, Credit Sesame. You know, I wanted to mention both, right? Because Credit Sesame, they're not as big because Credit Karma was actually purchased by Intuit. If you guys don't know who Intuit is, Intuit also owns QuickBooks, which is the #1 bookkeeping software that a lot of small businesses use. That's one of the things that we teach here at the Acorn Project. They also own TurboTax. And of course, TurboTax is one of the largest tax preparation softwares. And so they are a gigantic, oh, and they also own another thing that I don't know if I have it mentioned here in the in this program, but Mint.com. Intuit also owns Mint. And so there's a lot of information that you can get to sign up for Mint.com as well. So Intuit is gigantic. And so if you don't mind being in that giant conglomerate of financial information, signing up for Credit Karma is a great option. So, but you know, we mentioned credit scores. We kind of got off track because right now we are focusing on the credit report. And so the next place to go for your credit report, and this is to get your official credit report. Okay. This is not going to be something like, as you saw in Credit Karma, they give you an approximation of what's on your credit, right? And it's you know, they give you the actual things, but they don't show you everything that would be on your credit report. You can actually get that here on annualcreditreport.com. And so I'm going to take you out of this and go back to my screen here and go back. And so here's the current live annualcreditreport.com. You are going to be entering your social security number. So make sure that you're at the right website. And this is what the right website should look at, annualcreditreport.com. So make sure it says that. It's got up here for safety, right? It's got the little lock. That means it's at the HTTPS. It's a secure site. But this is what it should look at, annualcreditreport.com. And annualcreditreport.com, what this is an agreement between the federal government and the 3 different credit bureaus. And you can see the different credit bureaus down here on my right, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, right? And the federal government, they said, hey, you know, you guys are collecting all this data. We know that you charge people for that information, but, you know, one of the services that you need to do is you need to at least provide a free credit report to individuals at least one time a year. And that's how it used to be. So you could come in and log in and get your credit report, but it would only be one time per year. However, since COVID has happened, I don't know if it's the federal government or it's the bureaus, but they have really loosened the rules on how often you guys are able to get a credit report. And if you look here, up here on the top box, it says, during this period of economic uncertainty, managing your financial health is important. That's why Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion are continuing to offer free weekly online credit reports. So you don't have to wait, 1 year to get a free credit report. You can actually get credit reports from each of these bureaus each week to monitor, what is going on with your credit. What we used to actually had a tip on the way to get your credit report is to actually go and sign up, get your credit report, and then 4 months later get your one from a different bureau, and then do one from a different bureau 4 months after that. And by the next time the next 4 months rolled around, it would be 1 year, and you could go back to the first credit report. And that way you could, every 4 months, you would be checking on and being able to monitor your credit. But like I said, now that doesn't apply anymore, because you can get each of these 3 credit reports from each of the 3 bureaus every single week. Now, are you going to want to do that? Not likely, right? Because stuff is not changing. But I would say on a regular basis, it's good to go in. Now, one of the things I might recommend is to go in here and pull all three of your different credit reports. And if they all look good, maybe you sign up and do Credit Karma, and then don't even worry about it any longer, right? And then Credit Karma will notify you if something is wrong. So so be sure, so that's an easy way so that you don't have to drive yourself crazy going on here to the website and getting a free credit report every single week. But let's just quickly show you how you would go and get your free credit report. So you just click on there and it says request your free credit reports. So we click that again. We're going to fill out information about ourselves, right? Your first, middle initial, your last, your birthday, and here it is, right? Your social security number, right? They're saying give me your social security number and verifying it. You'll have to give your address. And if you have not lived at your current address for more than 2 years, you'll have to give a previous address. You hit next, and generally what will happen is you'll be directed to a site where you can choose one of the three reports, or you can choose all three. And then let me go back to my presentation here. You'll actually come and see identity verification questions. Now, I will say that some of the different credit bureaus are changing the way that they have done this. This is the way they used to do all the different verifications. So you would enter all your information, you would click next, you would choose, one of the three bureaus, you would click next, and then this would be presented. And it's basically they're taking information from your credit report and they're asking you, okay, which street did you live at? And you can say, okay, well, none of those apply to me, and you hit none of the above, right? Or, hey, who's been in my current household? Oh, Christopher Kim's been in my household. You click him. And if you were able to answer all those questions correctly, then they would present your credit report. But just before the presentation, I went in. Now I have an account at TransUnion, so all it asked me to do is to put in my password, and it gave me the information. So sometimes if you're already set up these different bureaus, they're not requiring this verification any longer. So, but if it is, you are going to probably have to answer some questions. And I'll tell you that sometimes it's, I had a friend that was trying to get on, and he swore that he was answering all of these questions correctly, and they would just never allow him. They always say he's doing it incorrectly. You can still get your credit reports, but they require a mail-in form, and it's much longer. But one of the things that if you swear that you're answering these questions correctly, and you're still not able to get in, that could be a worrying sign, because there may be something wrong on your credit report. Maybe I'm putting none of the above, that these are the streets that I've lived at, right? However, it's showing on my credit report that I live at one of those streets. That could be somebody that has used my social security number and is applying for credit somewhere else in the country, right? And so that is something I'm going to want to be checking on, right? So that's one of the things. So if you're not able to get on, it could be a worrying sign, and be sure to at least request it by mail. Or Credit Karma may allow you on. Credit Karma has some of these same checks as well. So try some of the different bureaus, because even though you may be denied at one, you may be able to get on another, and then you may be able to check, right? Because they're not asking you everything that's on your credit report. They're asking you randomized questions, so for you to get on. So Juliet has a question: what is LexisNexis? And so LexisNexis is just a legal database, and the difference between like LexisNexis and like these credit databases is LexisNexis goes into other financial data, other transactions. They'll have information like on things like 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 if you filed for insurance claims, that LexisNexis maintains a database where insurance companies can send in information to LexisNexis and display that, right? So that's a little bit of it. So it's still financial information, and LexisNexis, I believe, does run their own database on credit. However, for credit decisions, as far as I know, folks are not using LexisNexis for those decisions. So that's why I haven't really focused on it in this presentation. Just because we've mentioned it, there is a partnership between FICO, and we'll talk about FICO in just a second, and LexisNexis to give a credit score for folks that do not have traditional credit or have bad traditional credit. So LexisNexis is people are starting to, these different credit bureaus are starting to use LexisNexis in a different way to be able to generate credit scores. So it is important. And there is a way also with LexisNexis to get on there and find out information that LexisNexis has on you as well. So I think that is important with any of these things, right? Even though we're talking about credit in this presentation, there's these large databases in the United States where information has been built up on you. Anytime you're able to get on and see what they have is a good opportunity for you, because you never know when somebody is relying on that information and that information is hurting you, whether it's applying for a job, applying for credit, applying for a loan, whatever it is. So, I can't tell you because I don't have it memorized. I just know that LexisNexis does have the ability for you to check that information. And to say, like Julie was saying, they stated I was in a car accident, right? That's an insurance company that's providing information to LexisNexis. And somehow they maybe they did it via your driver's license, and they tied your driver's license. And that's one of the reasons why you check this information. We're going to talk a little bit about checking what's on your credit report. And, sometimes this information is not just automatic. It's not just computers, but people are inputting this information. Well, what if somebody inputs the information, is a digit off, and that car accident gets tied to you, right? And it's not you, right? That's why you always want to be checking to be able to pull that information out. So, okay, so we've got our credit report. What's on a credit report? So I'm going to actually go over here and pull up. This is an old report. So when you pull your own credit report, it's going to look a lot different than this, and most likely, especially if you're older like myself, it's going to be a lot longer. But this will give you kind of the basics of what a credit report looks like. This is the Experian sample credit report. This is the thing that they've been putting for years. I wish they would update this so that there would be a more up-to-date one, but this is good enough, and this will give you kind of what, if you've never seen a credit report, what's on a credit report. So we have our key up at the top, just kind of gives our information, our credit report number, the date. Then we have a section for potentially negative items. So these are things that are going to be hurting us when we go to apply for credit, right? These are going to be things that maybe we haven't paid a bill, we haven't, for whatever reason, something bad has been going on. Okay, so we're going to want to find out what are the different things on this report, and how can I correct them. In this case, you'll see that this is John Q. Consumer, and he has a civil claim, and the civil claim has been paid, but you'll see that even though it has been paid, even after you've paid, that doesn't mean things necessarily drop off your credit report immediately. Negative marks stay on your credit report, and depending on the type of negative mark they stay on there for different lengths of time, and we'll talk about that in just a second. I should also say that under this potentially negative items, there's two different records here. We have public records. Generally, those are things like court cases. If there was a judgment against you, here is the more common items that many of us will experience, and this is credit items, right? Those are things like not paying something went into default. So here you can see that John Q. Consumer he's paid it, but he had a past due amount of 60 days, and this was to a bank. And if you look down here, if everybody can see, and I hope everybody can see this, let me see if I could, let me go here and see if I could, I don't think this is going to allow me to do it. I was hoping this would, oh, there we go, a little bit bigger. I just want to show you that we just talked about this. Here's installment, right? So this was an installment loan. This was some sort of loan that he was paying off, and he got past due for whatever it was. He ended up getting it paid, but he didn't, at the time it went 60 days. But even though he's paid it, it is still being reported there on his credit report, right? One thing I just wanted to mention, right, real quickly here is you'll know here's his account history, and it says that it's 30 days late as of November 2012, and it's 60 days as of December 2012. Well, look at the date that it was last reported, and you could even, we're going to go up here. I hope I'm not making you guys sick with my scrolling, but you look at the report date. Our report date is April 24th, 2012. And then if we went down back to where we were, right, that's technically in the future. And the reason why I want to say this is even their sample report that the Experian's giving out to people to say, hey, here's what a credit report should look like. And even their sample report has errors. That's what you're going to find. 80% of credit reports have errors on them. Could be duplicate information, could be your name's wrong, it could be stuff that's not hurting you at all. But that's one of the reasons why it's important to check your credit reports at least once, just to see what's on there and see, are they reporting anything, right? Did they actually put an account that's on there twice that shouldn't be on there, right? Because you're able to dispute all of those. That and by pulling off, let's say you have a negative credit card that you've paid, but it happens to be being reported twice, right? If you're able to pull that off, that may improve your credit score by a great deal. So that's one of the things that, why I encourage you to pull your credit report. And just so here's a collection agency that's a negative report. It's 95. It's still past due. And that's for he didn't pay his cable bill, right? Televised cable communications. Now, even though he's disputed, you can see there's a statement here, and I'll zoom out a little bit. But so he's disputed this, but that doesn't matter. Even though he's disputed it, it's still showing as a negative mark. Okay. Then we come to a section, and it's accounts in good standings. And these are going to be all the different accounts that you have paid, that you've paid off, even if they're, even if you're no longer paying them, the loan's been paid, or if you have open like credit cards, right? Those will also show here in the accounts in good standing. And so he has an auto loan. This is once again, you can see this is an installment. See, this is open, never late. Here's a credit card that is closed. You can see, we know it's a credit card because it's revolving. But it's closed. You can see it's high balance, things like that. So that's generally on your credit report, especially if you've been around for a long time. You're going to see a lot of different maybe credit card accounts, things like that, in that section as well. Here we have kind of an interesting section, and these are what they call requests for your credit history. And I will say, depending on which different report you pull, they'll be named a little bit differently. But basically what these are either a hard inquiry or a soft inquiry. And request viewed by others is what is called a hard inquiry. And see, they call it request viewed by others, but essentially what a hard inquiry is you've gone and requested credit. And when you go to request credit, that is a little strike against your credit. That's why you don't want to do that that often. But here, John Q. Consumer has gone. Maybe he wanted to check on getting a real estate loan. He wanted, let's see what else. Doesn't say what M&T Bank is or Western Funding is. But basically, when you're getting a hard inquiry, you have requested credit for somebody. Then you have these request viewed only by you. And what those are considered is a soft inquiry. And the reason why they call that a soft inquiry is because it's really not fair to penalize you if if you haven't asked for credit. When you go and you get a credit card, that credit card in their terms and conditions, they have set out language that allows them to check on your credit at any time, right? And if every time they checked on your credit, let's say they do it every month, and it hurts you, that would be totally unfair, right? That would really damage your credit. So they are allowed to check the credit. It does not hurt you when they do that, and it will notify you as a soft inquiry or a soft pull here in the section request viewed only by you. All right, and that's what we have here. We have a couple different banks that are checking on him. And then you have a personal information, right? And this could be also where there could be a lot of errors. You can see he's listed as John Q. Consumer, Jonathan Q. Consumer, JQ Consumer, right? Who his employer is, who his spouse is, right? His different addresses. These are all different things to check, and different, right? A wrong address, that could be just a keystroke error, right? It could be a former address. It could be somebody that's doing something wrong. That's something that you want to check. And if you find those errors on there, you want to be able, you can apply to have them removed, especially if they're harming you. Then you could always do a personal statement. And you may say, why would I do a personal statement? Oftentimes, the personal statement won't change the credit score, won't change your credit report. All that information is going to be there. However, if you're using your credit report, and let's say it's being pulled by a landlord so you can rent an apartment, maybe you have a personal statement there and say, hey, I've been maintaining good credit, but 4 years ago, I got into a car accident, and that caused me to have a lot of medical bills. And I've been working to pay that off, but that's why my credit report has all these delinquent items on there. So you're providing somebody who pulls that a little bit of an explanation, and maybe that little explanation that will convince that person to not deny, your application for, the apartment in this situation. Okay, so let's go back to our presentation here. So that's what a credit report looks like. You guys can download that. I've included that there under files. It's number 2, the sample credit report. And like I mentioned before, there's a bunch of credit reporting errors on people's credit report. So that's why you want to pull them so you can be checking them. It could be uninvited inquiries, right? I've heard this. You go to a car dealership, and the person's the guy that's the car dealer, the car salesman, hey, I need your social security number just so I can check because of the RICO statutes, right? The racketeering statute. I just gotta have your social security number, right? And what he goes and does is actually run your credit because he wants to get you one of his loans, right? You didn't authorize that. That's something that you can protest as an uninvited inquiry. All right. So there's a number of different ways that people will try to get things onto your credit report, and it's your job to get them off. I mentioned that things can be listed longer than, even when you paid them. And here's that list, right? So when you have those inquiries, right, whether it's a soft or a hard one, those last for 2 years and then they drop off, right? So delinquent items, 7 years. Chapter 13 or a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Chapter 13, 7 years. Chapter 7 bankruptcies, 10 years. If you have an unpaid tax lien, like from, like we saw, it could be a judgment, something like that. Those will last forever, right? So anytime you owe the government money, make sure you pay the government money because they hard to win against the government. Closed accounts in good standing, right? That's maybe like a credit card that you've paid off, right? And you've closed the account. Those will stay on for 10 years. And of course, if you have an open credit card, that will stay on forever until you close it. And then of course it would be 10 years from that. So I'm not going to really go into this section here, but this is disputing credit report errors, right? And you guys can download the file under there, the NLC Credit 101 PDF. It has all of this information. And there is ways that you can contact each of the credit bureaus and dispute the information. And in the presentation, we talk about where to send the disputes and all that information. And of course, I provided my email. If you guys ever want to contact me for assistance with that, by all means, that's what I'm here for. So, but just know that you can dispute things when you see those on your credit report that it shouldn't be there. Now, here's a section that a lot of people, they really like, right? So this is, if you guys don't know who this is the legendary kind of jazz rock band, Steely Dan. This is for their big #1 hit, Ricky Don't Lose That Number. Ricky Don't Lose That Number. It's the only one you own. I think it's a great, kind of placeholder for the credit score, right? Because the credit score is very valuable. Oh, and I see down here in my sharing, it's hiding it, but that's what it says. It's the only one you own. So let's talk a little bit about the credit score. If you guys know the movie Dumb and Dumber, this is Jim Carrey. So it says your credit score is 470. So you're telling me there's a chance, right? We want to know how we get a great credit score, because oftentimes, the credit score is what is the deciding factor, not the credit report, but it's the credit score that's the deciding factor on whether you get credit or not. So what is a credit score, right? So we talked about what a credit report is. A credit score is just a model, right, that gives whoever is going to be loaning you money just an approximation of how risky you are. That's all it is, right? They take all that information that is on your credit report, and then they calculate a number, and they say, Bob, your number, you're this risky. Here's your number, right? That's essentially what it is. And especially when you're making small revolving credit decisions, right? So issuing you a credit card, it's generally the sole number. So if you have a credit report, they may also, do income, but oftentimes income can be self-reported. The credit card and the credit score, the credit score is the #1 thing that is being considered when making those small decisions. Each bureau has a credit score, and there's other credit scores, right? We've mentioned even some of those credit scores. So where do you get your credit score? Well, we mentioned Credit Karma. I'm going to need to change this because the Discover Free Credit Scorecard that used to be there is no longer there. So don't go there. But that was a great thing because Discover would just give you your #1 credit score, which is called the FICO, which we'll talk about in just one second. But oftentimes you'll see on your credit card statement up at the top, they'll actually just give you your credit score, right? They're already checking it, so they just give you that as kind of one of the bonuses of having a credit card with different companies. Sometimes a bank or a credit union will also put it on their statements. And of course, Credit Karma, right? That's not the official credit score. The official credit score is the FICO. And I was going to ask you guys what's the average FICO score in the U.S., but apparently it just came up. So I apologize about that. It's 710, right? But what is FICO? So FICO stands for the Fair Isaac Corporation, and FICO is the #1 credit scoring model used in the United States. And I should say that it's not just one credit model. They have lots of different models, depending if you're you're a lender lending cars, if you're doing mortgage lending, if you're doing credit. They have built different models to approximate risk, right? So, but they are the primary score of credit in the United States. For a FICO score, it ranges between 300 to 850, and the average FICO score in the U.S. is 710. A lot of times, people ask, okay, well, I work in any country. Nobody's got, a credit score of 710. And one of the things that I was thinking about is that it's probably because if you have bad credit and then you don't utilize the credit system, you get what's called is a thin file, where people don't even know your credit. score any longer, right? It's like you don't even have a credit score. Well, if you don't have a credit score, that doesn't get taken into the average, right? And so that's one of the probably why the average is 710, and 710 is a fairly decent credit score. So let's talk about how your credit scores is made up. So 35% is your payment history. 30%, the next highest slice is your utilization, and the next highest slice is your length of history, right? And all the length of history, and I'm going to explain utilization in a minute. So I'm going to come back to that so you guys know what utilization is. Length of history is just how long you've had credit. Types of credit is the next section at 10%. That's just a mix. Could be auto loans, credit cards. Don't know why that mix makes up 10%, but that's just what FICO says it does. And then the last part, this last 10%, is the applications, and those are the hard inquiries, right? And so if you have a bunch of hard inquiries, then that 10% starts going down. So what's utilization? So utilization is really calculated based on the number of credit cards you have, and it's how much of the available credit you have that you are using. So here's a good example of how you would calculate utilization. So you have 3 credit cards, right? You have 3 different credit limits, 2,000, 3,000, and 5,000. So we're going to add all those up. That's $10,000, right? When your credit card statement closes at the end of the year, excuse me, at the end of the month, you owe a certain amount, right? So we have 3 different credit cards. On credit card 1, when it closes, we owe $500. On credit card 2, we don't owe anything. And on credit card 3, we owe $4,000. So we added up our 3 credit limits. We're going to add up what we owe, and that goes to $4,500. And all we're going to do is we're going to divide that. 4,500 divided by 10,000 is a 45% utilization. That's the sole way you calculate utilization. Very simple. What they don't tell you is kind of the rule of thumb. And the rule of thumb is that you want to keep your utilization below 30%. When you get above 30%, it starts to hurt your credit. We don't know how much it hurts your credit, right? Like, if you're at 32, is that so much more terrible than 30? Probably not, right? It's probably not going to be a big hit to your credit. But as you go a higher and higher utilization, it starts to really, really damage your credit. And actually, what I wanted to show you, I went too far. I wanted to show you what happened, kind of what happened during, not during the pandemic, but during we had our crash, financial crash, 10 years ago, right? And you had a lot of people that had high utilization on credit cards. And what the credit card companies, they thought, man, this person's going to default on me. So you have here, let's say I only have one credit card, and I have a balance of $10,000 on that credit card, or I have a limit of $10,000, and I owe $7,000. I have a balance there when the month ends. That's a 70% utilization. That'll make a bank nervous. Hey, if something happens to Mark, we're not going to get paid. So what they would do is, so let's say I pay some of that down. I paid that down. I paid $500. They were actually lowering the credit limits on people. And in this case, you could see they lowered me to just above what I owed. Well, you know what that does, though? Even though I've paid off some of that, that really increases the utilization now to 98%. So they're killing my credit. So this is why, if at all possible, always maintain a low utilization on the credit cards that you have. And there's a number of strategies that we can do to use to do that. So we'll talk about that in a second. But be thinking about that, because this, having a high utilization could really hurt you. And I will say, for people that try to get like perfect credit scores, and like perfect would be 850, very rare to do. And it's not necessarily to say that that person is the best credit risk. I mean, that's what it does say, right? But it's not really true in real life, because a lot of times people will game that system. And what they'll try to do is have like a number of credit cards, and barely use any credit on them, and they'll have a really low utilization, definitely under 10%, but maybe it's like 1 or 2%. And what that's showing is that's really bumping up that portion of that credit mix to where you have a really high score in utilization. And so that's what a lot of people will do to try to really get high credit scores. But for most of us, we're not trying to get perfect scores. We're just really trying to get a good utilization. The 850, we're not trying to get 850. Maintaining under 30% is good enough. Okay, so Don asks, why would a credit card company increase credit limit if you're not using the card? Okay, so in this situation, they weren't increasing the limit, they were decreasing the limit. I don't know if you're talking about a different situation, but in this situation, they were decreasing the limit. I don't know why they would increase it if you're not using it. Sometimes if you're not, generally if you're using it but you're paying it off, sometimes you can ask them and they will increase the limit, because obviously they know if you're using it quite a bit, even if you're not charging a lot on it, but you're regularly using the card, they may give you additional credit because they want the ability, they want you to use their card, right? So hey, if you have more room, maybe they'll charge more on it, right? So that's one of the reasons, right? As long as you have good credit, they want to give you as much credit as possible because they want you to charge with them. And then Galen asks, doesn't having a lot of unused credit or open bring your credit score down? Actually, that's not true, Galen. Having open credit is actually good. So going back to this example where we look at utilization, if you had 10 cards here and you had $100,000 credit limit and you had nothing owed, that would be great as long as they're willing to keep those cards open, because that's rock solid. Because what's happening is your utilization is so low and you have such high credit limits that actually helps your credit. What happens is, if we go to this next example, anytime you close credit, especially when you owe money, that's going to increase your utilization. And what happens is that actually hurts your credit. So actually, it sounds, it sounds counter-logical, right? It sounds like, hey, I'm doing the right thing. I'm reducing my credit that's out there, so I don't charge as much, and I don't, there's the risk that somebody can't steal my credit. But what's actually happening is, according to the model, you're actually hurting yourself. So, that's actually, if possible, keep those credit cards open. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. So how good is my credit score? I'm going to blaze through here, but just to show you what are different credit scores and what's a good credit score. So poor credit is generally about 550 and under. A subprime, if you remember back during that time, about a little more 13 years ago, we heard about those subprime loans that defaulted. So that's in this category between 550 and about 620. The acceptable period is between about 620 and maybe 7, or about 680. Then we have a good credit is about 680 to just about 740, and then 740 and below, above is excellent. So it doesn't matter if you're at 741 or you're at 850. You're generally going to qualify for the best interest rates, right? And that's what we're generally looking at. So how good is my credit score? So when we look at poor credit, only about 6% of the country has poor credit. Prime, a little bit more, maybe about 14%. Acceptable, about 17%. Good is about 18, a little bit more. And then excellent, the vast majority has excellent credit, about 42%. And you're like, that can't be. And I think what's happening is, like I mentioned before, if people are dropping out of the credit scoring system, they have very thin files, because remember, all of those bad debts drop off of your credit. So if all of those, so if you haven't used credit in decades, right? Technically you don't even have a credit file anymore, right? And you're not going to be kind of calculated in this mix. So what they're showing is for people that have that credit score, these are the percentages. But I think if we looked at the total population, we might find a lot of people that there may be the largest bar here that don't even have a credit score, right? Because they've just chosen, they only use cash, they don't have credit cards, they don't have loans, they've chosen to opt out of the credit system. And I'm sorry if I miss some of your questions. I'm trying to, because there's so much to cover, and I'm trying to get through this. But I'll and like the presentation ends technically in 10 minutes, but I'm more than willing to stay on and answer questions and continue on. After it closes. So what happens when we request to close credit cards? So when you request to close a credit card, the credit card company will close it for you. That's all they do. They may try to convince you to keep it open. They may ask you why, but they'll close a credit card. But if you're asking what happens with respect to the credit mix, is that it reduces your available credit. That's all it's doing. It's reducing your available credit. Now, if you have a lot of other cards, it may not matter, right? Because especially if you haven't charged a lot and you have a lot of other cards, going from like a $100,000 credit limit to 90,000, and I'm using crazy terms. I don't have $100,000 in credit, right? But for the math, going to 100 to 90, if you only charge, $3,000 every so often, you're using very low utilization. It's not going to be an issue, right? But if you only have $1,000 and you're charging $500 and you have those on two cards and you close one of the $500 cards, now you may be going to 100% utilization. So it's really you have to assess how many cards you have, what are the different limits, how much do I charge every month, and then you have to make a decision, because there may be times when you want to close a credit card. Maybe they charge a large fee, right? So one of the things you might do is open another credit card that has a similar balance, and then close the one with a fee card, right? Doesn't mean charge that other card up. What it means is, hey, I'm keeping the amount of available credit that I have, but I'm reducing any cards that have a fee in them. So there is ways to do that. Cheryl, what if you don't have credit? Well, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So let's go over and just say, okay, so what happens and what is a good credit score? Okay. And generally, we talked about the different bands. Moral of the story is, as you get better credit, right? And I think this should be flipped around, right? Because obviously you're getting better credit as you go down in this image. But essentially what's happening is the interest that you're paying on things becomes lower, right? That's essentially what you're becoming a better credit risk. And so the cost to borrow is becoming lower. And like it says here, 300 to 550 poor credit. You may get a 9.5% mortgage rate. You're not going to get a mortgage if you have a 300 score credit. I don't think you can go to 300, even though that's the lower range. I don't know that I've ever seen a 300 credit score, but you're just not going to be able to get credit as you have poor credit. And then definitely, as your credit gets worse, if you're able to get credit, you're going to be paying extremely high interest rates, right? And that's the cost of credit. So let's talk about real quick tips to improve. All it is looking back at that pie chart we had. We're just focusing on those different sections of the pie chart and how we can do different things according to the different charts. What are the different things? So like the largest chunk of that pie chart was, your payment history. So the best thing you could do is to pay bills on time and to never be late. If you can't avoid and you are late, ask the creditor, especially if it's only a one time, can you remove that item, right? So anything that you can do to pay bills on time and make sure that you never have a late pay on your credit report is going to go to the biggest portion of increasing your credit score. like we mentioned before, try to utilize less than 30% of your available credit. Maximize your score with less than 10%. We mentioned people that are doing that. Start early, right? That goes to credit, the length of time that you have credit. I know that a lot of times in these classes that I'm teaching, we're dealing with folks that don't have a lot of credit, right? So some of the things aren't going to apply to them, right? They just can't do it. Like I mentioned, try to maintain at least 3 good credit accounts, right? So if you could have 3 credit cards and you're going to charge very little on them, that's going to be the best case scenario, right? Because we mentioned that thing about if a bank chooses to close one, then you have 2 others that allow you to continue on and keep building credit, right? Whereas if you only have 1 credit card, even if you're being very conscientious with it, if anything happens and you lose that, then you're in real trouble. So these are just best practices. What you need to do is just do what you can do wherever you are. So that's one of the things I think is very important. Use different types of credit. Don't apply for credit often, right? Because of those hard inquiries. Try not to close credit cards unless there are fees, right? And we just mentioned that, like if you were leapfrogging. And shop for loans within a short period of time. If you're going and you're getting a car loan, there's kind of this rule that within 2 weeks, you can apply for multiple car loans because you know you're only buying 1 car, right? I think it's a little bit longer, a month, if you're buying a home, right? And so that's just kind of a little technique if you're buying a car or a loan. But applying for a lot of credit, that's just going to hurt your score, right? So try not to do that. So you guys can't see it, but it says, "Build me up, Buttercup, don't break my heart." This is by the Foundations for their great song from the 60s. So now we're talking about, okay, we got bad credit, we got no credit. So what are we going to do? Okay, so let's roll through this real quick. There's no quick fix. So like if you go and you see things that people that want to do credit repair and they want to charge you money, avoid that. So I was just reading about a person. This is in Houston. I think I don't know if she's been convicted. She's at least got arrested. So what she was doing is she would have people pay her money, and she would go and say, "I'm going to repair your credit." She was filing fake police reports and saying that there has been identity theft on my client's accounts, and that all the bad credit is actually fake people, or it's actually people that put that information on there, right? Through identity theft. It's not my clients, right? And the bank was like removing these items. Well, they found that out. All those things come back. She's been arrested. So be very careful with credit repair. What happens a lot of times is the credit recovery companies or credit repair companies, they'll charge you money, and then they use some of these shady techniques, and at the end you're out your money and you still have bad credit. You may have good credit for a very short time, but in the long run you don't have good credit. Okay, so be very careful about using credit repair companies. It's better to take a long-term approach, and there's organizations like the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. They offer basically free and very low cost services. They have the ability to negotiate with credit card companies for payback rates and all these type of things. I would encourage you, and of course the number's up here, but if you download the presentation, it's on there as well. These are not in, or actually, so this is in the presentation. My next slide is not, but I forget who, I'm going to forget his name. I'm going back up to the top. I think it was Josh. Josh mentioned a secured card. One of the best things that you guys could do is join a credit union. And so a credit union often has a lot of great programs to help you rebuild credit. They can have a secured card. If you remember up at the top, we talked about unsecured and secured secured debt, right? So with the secured card, you go and you put down a money. They put that in what they call a CD, a certificate of deposit. And then they issue you a credit card, right? As long as you make 12 months on-time payments, they're going to give you that money back. If you default, right, they're going to use that certificate of deposit to satisfy the credit card, the bill that you have, right? But as long as you're making on-time payments, they're going to hand you that certificate of deposit back, and that secured card converts to a regular credit card, and now you're off building. Okay, so there's a lot of these programs that are at the credit union. Starter cards, sometimes if you just go ask, maybe you have a thin credit file, they'll just start you with a very low limit card, right? Maybe it's $200, $300. There's also a reverse thing where there's a credit rebuilder loan where excuse me, you go and you take out a loan, but instead of you getting the money, they put the money in a CD, and then every month you pay back on that loan. And then when whatever the term of the loan is up, maybe it's 12 months, you get all that money back. But what's happened though is that they've been reporting that you've had this loan, and now that's going on your credit report and starting to build your credit. Okay. And one of the other things that you can do, some people may say this may be a little unethical. I'm going to mention it here because it's something people do, is to borrow somebody else's credit, right? So if you're a parent and you have a kid, maybe you put them as an authorized user of your card. You don't give them the card, right? Because they could come and charge off a bunch of stuff that you owe. But by making them an authorized user, they get to borrow your good credit. Okay. Now here's a problem though. If you got bad credit, don't do that for your kid because you may be hurting your kid, right? But I know a lot of parents will do that, especially for kids that are even underage, right? They may get a card in their name using their social security number, not give them the card, and by the time they're 18, they have this great credit history. So be thinking about, there are ways that you guys can go and do that. And Marina asked, can an authorized user ruin my credit? It is a possibility. It's a little bit more complicated when it's an authorized user, right? Because it's not technically your debt, but it all depends on the way that card is showing on your card. But if you're there is the possibility that somebody who has you as an authorized user and is not paying that bill, some of that bad credit can come back on you and ruin your credit as well. I threw this in. This is not in the presentation. And Lewis, if you're on, we're just past time. I didn't know if you want to keep going or if you
No, please keep going. The information I think is valuable. I think everyone here is enjoying it. I mean, I say let's keep going. Let's get the information out there. That's the most important thing. I agree.
Oh, great. Yeah, I just didn't know if you wanted to close and I could go after you close. But I'll keep going. I only have a few more slides to go.
No problem.
Yeah. So this is I threw this slide in. It's not in the presentation, and this is alternative credit models. And what I mean by that is there. We have a whole different world that's going on now with this AI and all this stuff, and it's coming into the credit world as well. And so there are different credit companies that are trying to develop products that look not solely at your credit score when they're issuing a credit decision, right? So they may be looking at your rental or utility payments. And like I mentioned earlier, is that, like with a utility, if you go, like I said, they're giving you a little bit of credit, right? If you're getting your electricity and then you pay it at the end of the month. That doesn't ever go to your credit report unless you don't pay. Because then what happens if you don't pay, they send it to a collection agency, and the collection agency is a reporter, then they put it on your credit report. However, if you've been paying your utility bills, you've been being extended credit and being and you're paying that, and you may be paying on time. So that what they done is there's a number of different credit companies that are looking at ways to examine some of those different categories, looking at so rental and other utility payments, things like that, employment history, the income, your banking history. So there's cards like the Pedal One card. That's what this looks like. It's a very simple card. It's the Pedal One card. They look at alternative factors. The X1 card, their main focus is on income, right? So you may have a very thin file. You may have bad credit, but if you can document income, and the way they generally document income is you're going to give them access to your bank. Some people are very uncomfortable with that, right? But it's either going to be your social security number, or you're going to have to provide information because they're loaning you money. So I do know that like with the X1 card, you give them access to your bank. They document that you're getting, regular paychecks that are put in there, and then they make a credit decision that's based on that, right? The Pedal One, they look at a number of other factors besides credit score, and then they issue you. And then as you build your credit, then you can work out like Pedal Two. There's a Pedal Two card, and that Pedal Two card gives you rewards, right? But they want you to have a little bit better credit, right? So you start with the Pedal One, start going, building up your credit, and then you can advance. And then, last but not least, I'm going to get to everybody's question. But my last slide is about protecting your credit, right? And protecting your credit with a credit freeze, right? So we mentioned monitoring, right? So we're going to use Credit Karma. We're going to get signed up. And then if somebody ever tries to open a credit card in our name, Credit Karma is going to email us and we can go investigate that, right? So we're not going to pay for credit monitoring. We're going to go to Credit Karma. What a credit freeze is, so a credit freeze, and this is something that I've had for many, many years, is you get it with each of the different bureaus. Right, we talked about the three main bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And you go to them and you say, I want you to freeze my credit. So unless you have this code, they're going to issue you a code. Nobody can open credit in your name. All right. And some people feel that might be a hassle, right? Of course, I would ask the question, how often do you apply for credit, right? I don't know that I've applied for credit in months, years. I don't know when the last time I've applied for credit, to be honest with you. So that's one of the things, right? And what that does though is that when you have your credit frozen, nobody can get credit in your name, right? So the risk of identity theft is minimized. There's other ways that people could steal your identity, other things they can do, but it really locks down it really locks down your credit and the ability for people to open accounts in your name. I used to have another slide on here to talk about different costs and everything, but really, there was a huge breach by, I hope it's, I think it's Experian and maybe Equifax. It was one of the two E's. Huge breach, the largest breach in history. Something like 500 million, accounts got out there, social security numbers, all kinds of information. And at that point, they changed it. They used to charge every time that you wanted to freeze your credit. Used to be $10. You wanted to unfreeze your credit to go apply for a loan, another $10. They've done away with that. It's basically free now. You can get your credit frozen at all of the bureaus, totally free of charge, and it would definitely be. It's worth it. Now, I will tell you, sometimes it is a hassle if you do lose your password, or you don't know your password, or you forget it's on. Lynn is my associate here at IDRS. She's on here. She's not I forgot to make her a presenter, so she can't talk, but I'll just tell the story real quick. This presentation, I told Lynn, you should get your credit frozen. Of course, she went and got her credit frozen. Multiple years later, she went to go buy furniture. They kept denying her, and she's like, I don't know what's going on. I got great credit. Found out it was the credit freeze, right? Her credit's frozen. She can't get credit. Of course, she didn't have the information, so she had to go home and freeze the credit and then come back to buy the furniture, right? So it is a little bit of a hassle. But I'll tell you, my wife, we live on a ranch, so you get when you live on a ranch, you get your wife some unique gifts. She wanted a riding lawnmower, so we went down to Lowe's and got a riding lawnmower, right? And they had this deal. If you financed it, you got, I guess there was a great deal. So of course my credit's frozen. I was able with my phone to log into my account, use my code, and unfreeze my account while sitting there. It took me 5 minutes, right? But I was able to unfreeze my account so they could do a credit check there at Lowe's, and I was able to buy the lawnmower on credit. So so it adds another step. But you know what? All the other times when I haven't applied for credit, right? having it frozen, I know that my credit's totally safe, right? Nobody can ever open up an account, you know. And one of the nice things is when I go places, right? You ever go to a store and there's somebody there and they say, hey, you want to open up, you know, get a new satellite dish, you want to get a new credit card. I'm sorry, my credit's frozen, right? Shuts them down immediately, right? Because you can't open credit. You want to apply for a new credit card? Sorry, my credit's frozen. Shuts them down. I like that. I throw that out all the time. Even if you don't have your credit frozen, you could throw that out to get them, to shut them down. But so that's one of the, you know, but that's, you know, if you have really good credit, even if you don't have good credit, right? Protecting your credit is one of the things. And so we want to make sure that you're protecting as well. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to see if I, you know, didn't get to your question. If I don't get to your question or I don't see it, please put it in again. I'd be more than happy to answer it. I'm going back up here. I think I answered all of that up there. Let's see. I'm seeing if there's any ones that I missed. Because Rachel said, I thought it could backfire. I don't know what at that point I was talking about. So you might mention again what you thought could, you know, a thought could backfire because you're considered a risk. And I'd be more than happy to talk about it. Cheryl, you know, you asked, what if you don't have credit? I hope that this helped you out a little bit, right? So if you don't have credit, one of the things, you know, I always mention going to a credit union, right? Because there's first just asking if they have a starter card, right? That's the easy thing, because they may say, okay, yeah, we're going to start you out on that, right? So that's an easy way. And then those two other options, and not every credit union will have a secured card. Not every credit union will have a credit rebuilder loan. I think the secured card is more common than the credit rebuilder loan. So you may have to go to a couple credit unions or a few credit unions to find those products. But they're out there. And of course, credit unions, if you guys don't know, credit unions are nonprofits. Banks are corporations that are owned by shareholders, right? So they're trying to make a profit. Credit unions are there for the members, right? And as you open an account at a credit union, you become a member. And so they're really trying to help out the members. And so that's why credit unions offer that those products, and why it's important to go to a credit union, especially if you don't have good credit or no credit and you're just starting out and you want to build credit. It's you know, the credit unions are kind of like that gold standard for people in that situation. Let's see. So Rachel did mention, you know, in the example of closing one card and opening another, when your score go down due to longevity portion of the score, there is the potential, if you did close one of the older cards, it could reduce your credit history. So that is something to think about. If you have an old credit card that that has fees on it, but you know, if you notice that the longevity of credit is one of the lowest or the smallest factors in your credit score. So if you do have an old credit card, especially one that has high fees, it may just be worth it to take that one-time hit on the longevity of credit. And of course, you know, I'm saying only close that card if you have other cards available, right? If that's your only credit card, I would never say close that card. You should be building up additional cards. And every time when I say build up cards, right? I'm saying build up cards. All that is doing is increasing your available balance. If you feel that by having, if I have that available balance, I'm going to spend that money, do not go and get more credit cards, right? Because that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to put yourself into debt. You don't want to cause more problems for you, right? This is, you have to be very careful as you're opening these cards, because you do now have the ability to spend a lot of money, right? And that's something that I'm not encouraging anybody to do. I'm not saying go and get a bunch of cards and now start going hog wild, right? It's really, all we're doing is we're manipulating the scoring model that FICO has put out for us to manipulate, right? And one of the things they do that is, hey, if I got to charge some stuff on a credit card, I want to make sure that I have a lot of headroom above me, right? And that's that utilization. And so that's going to be having credit cards with, you know, available balances open. so that I don't go over that 30% utilization. Okay, Alan Pruitt mentioned Experian Boost program will add your recurring bills like cell phone, utilities to your Experian credit file. You need to pay those bills to your checking account so Experian can track the payments. So that's a great suggestion, Alan. A lot of the credit bureaus are doing that. They see that FICO, and I mentioned FICO. You guys didn't know what FICO meant at the time, but I mentioned FICO when somebody had mentioned LexisNexis. And FICO, I'm forgetting what the name of their program is called. It's something FICO X or something, or FICO Ed X or something. And it's where they're going to use data from LexisNexis to make a credit score because you have a thin credit file, right? And these credit bureaus, they don't want FICO to get all of those borrowers, so they're coming out with their program. And one of those is Experian Boost. So be looking at if you have a thin credit file, or or you may have had some bad credit. What programs could I take advantage of that will allow me to have my good payment history or my income, count for my credit, and then I can start building the credit from there. Because that's essentially what you're trying to do, right? If you're always going to be paying bills late, or you're going to be what they call a charge off. A charge off is when you have a credit card open and then it goes delinquent and you just never pay it, and eventually the credit card company has to charge it off. If you're going to do that, you're always going to have bad credit. You're always going to have problems getting credit, but if you are wanting to maintain good credit, if you're wanting to, increase your credit score, have the ability to borrow money when you need to do that, to get low, to pay low interest rates when you are wanting to borrow credit, then these are the things that you're going to want to be doing to go about building that credit. Okay, let's see. Julie was talking about Broward County, a $34 million scam, right? There's credit report scams out there all across the country. Daniela James says, how many authorized users can I use wisely? Daniela, to be honest, I don't know that answer. I don't know if there's a limit to how many authorized users that you can have under your name. You might go, oftentimes when people are, broaching the subject of having authorized users. I mean, because sometimes people are having authorized users. Like, to give you an example, I've been involved with a gentleman where I've done his bookkeeping for many, many years. And he has made me an authorized user on his credit card, and he has given me the credit card. That's because I make purchases for his business, right? So there is legitimate reasons why you might want to make somebody an authorized user. And I shouldn't say legitimate, that's the wrong term. There may be reasons why, a business reason why you want to make somebody an authorized user and give them the card, right? So that's not to say never give somebody the card if there's a reason to do that, right? Maybe you have a kid, and you want the kid to have a credit. They're at college or something, and you want them to have a credit card so they can buy things, or they're in Europe, and you want them to have the ability to buy things, right? There may be reasons, right? You may want to put limits on those, but there could be reasons for that. But I don't know if there's a limit on the number of authorized users that you can have. But I would be thinking, if you had dozens of authorized users underneath you, it might not have the same effect. But I can't be honest on that. I mean, maybe that's an experiment that needs to happen so people can see, because maybe if somebody can do that, they could be spreading that good credit around to a bunch of other people. Lynette says, at what age can you be an authorized user? Asking because I have kids. So from what I understand, somebody can be an authorized user at any age, right? So even if they're a baby, right, you have their social security number, you could put them on as an authorized user. And and I'll just say this happens a lot, right? I'm sure you guys have heard of things like this happening in your community. It's, we mentioned on the last slide about credit freeze and the difficulty, of identity theft. Well, the number one cause of identity theft, especially for kids in this country, is by their parents. It's not by people elsewhere, right? It's parents get into trouble, they have bad credit, they need to borrow money, and they utilize their kids' social security information to apply for credit. They don't pay those bills, and then the kid doesn't find out about it until they go to college or something, or they turn 18 and they go to apply. So you could see that people will extend credit to kids, even before they turn 18, right? The parents, a lot of times it's off a social security number, right? They're not checking on age. But you could do that in the reverse situation with an authorized user, and you could put the kids as an authorized user, right? You're not giving them the card, right? So they don't have access to actually charge anything, but the credit card company doesn't know that. And so, and that's not to say the authorized user works every time, because like if you ever get to where you have an authorized user and you haven't given them a social security number, right? Well, we've talked about in this presentation that the whole credit system is tracked on social security numbers. So if you're allowed to make somebody an authorized user, but you're not giving a social security number, that authorized user is not going to be tracked, right? So they're not going to get that good mojo from your credit. So that's also something to be thinking about. What is the way this authorized user is being signed up? Is they're getting is a credit score? Are they asking for the credit for the social security number so that the credit will transfer? So be thinking about that. And one thing that just popped into my mind that I did not mention is going back to credit freeze, just because that came into my mind. There are ways to freeze the credit of your kids as well. If there's any concern, maybe you have a relative that may do that and may get access to those credit card, those social security numbers, and you want to prevent that, you can actually freeze your kids' credit. To do that, though, it's not as easy as signing up, because I should have mentioned, when you are going, and actually I'll do it just real quickly here. So if we were going, and all I would do here is I would search on like the different bureaus. So I'm going to search Experian, and I'm going to put credit freeze. And so you'll see here's Experian freeze or unfreeze your credit file. Some these credit bureaus do have other products that may be like a credit. I'm forgetting what one of them calls it, but it's basically what it is they don't want you to totally freeze your credit. It's kind of like a credit protection. They don't charge you, but what it's doing is it allows them to still market the data in your file so they can continue to make money. Once that you freeze your credit, that's it. No information can be distributed about your credit information until you unfreeze. So that's why the freeze is so powerful, right? And even credit unions, they try to hide this information. But all you can do here, you can see, I just searched Experian. I searched, freeze, credit freeze, and it pops up. And then I can go through the process. You can create an account. You go in there, enter all your information. You can see here, and then it's filling my information because it knows it already, but put in my date of birth, phone number, boom. And then it goes through the credit freeze process. That's how you would freeze for an adult. For a kid, though, is that you cannot freeze for a kid like that. They do make it a little more difficult. They're going to want you to actually send in the information. They're going to want you to send in probably a birth certificate and an ID. You can go and search for a minor credit freeze at the different credit bureaus as well, and they'll tell you exactly how you're to do it at each of the different bureaus. So, okay, sorry, so much information when you start talking about these credit programs. Let's see. I'm going down. Josh, do you understand on? Can you go through your bank and they will help you? Yes, and that's why I say go to a credit union, because a lot of times the credit unions, they're just more likely to help you, right? And not try to sell you on a product that would hurt you, right? They're going to try to get you products that are going to help you. That's why I would recommend going to a credit union as my kind of first stop. in trying to begin the credit repair. And I think I mentioned before during the presentation that authorized user may be able to ruin a credit depending on. You know what? And I answered that. I answered that wrong on Marina. Can authorized user ruin my credit? The authorized user cannot ruin your credit, especially if they don't have the card, right? But you can ruin the authorized user's credit if you have bad credit. You stop paying. That's where I was mentioning. But if you make somebody an authorized user, they don't have access to your card, right? So they can't charge anything. Then they should not be able to affect your credit at all. So I apologize if I was confused previously on that. So Lynette mentioned, what about co-signing? I would never co-sign. Co-sign's the worst of two worlds, right? First, you owe the money. And so that's one of the bad things. And the other bad thing is you don't have access to whatever you bought, right? So if you co-sign a vehicle, right, you don't get the vehicle. Whoever you co-sign for gets the vehicle, but you still are obligated to the money if that person doesn't pay, right? So co-signing is very, and really the difficulty with co-signing, besides somebody not, I mean, it's not just that it's somebody not paying, it's that somebody doesn't pay and then you don't find out about it, right? So somebody's not paying, all of a sudden they're delinquent, and then all of a sudden you get hit with all these bills and it says, hey, this person hasn't been paying their bill, right? In an ideal world, if it's possible to do it, like let's say you're buying a vehicle for your child, right? The best way to do it is to buy the vehicle so right? Even if you have to take a loan out on it. So you're making the payments, that those payments are getting made, and then the child pays you, right? Now, I know some kids, they're not going to pay their parents, right? Like they may pay the bank or something, but then at least that the payment is going to be made, right? Because if the kid doesn't give you the money, you're at least going to give the money. Now, you may not be financially able to do that, but then if you're not financially able to do that, then that may be a good reason why you shouldn't be co-signing, right? Because if you're not financially able to pay those payments, if your child was unable to pay or did not pay, you're on the hook, and so you're going to have to pay, right? And so it can really devastate your credit. So be very careful when co-signing. I would say, and sometimes people have to co-sign, right? It's a dire situation, right? I'm not going to say there's a no for whatever reason. There's other trainings that we do around financial literacy. One of the things is we talk about payday loans, right? Payday loans are terrible, but sometimes people have to go to payday loans. It's the only way they can get money, and they need that money for whatever. The utilities are being shut off, right? And their husband's on a CPAP machine. They need the electricity. Okay, there are, so I'm never going to say never, but I would say if you're co-signing, do it as a last case scenario only. So Rachel asks, what would be a good enough credit score for adding your kids without it being detrimental to them? I don't know, but I would say I would want to be in those upper bounds. And if I went back here to this slide here, pull up this. So I would want to be, I would think, in these upper two bounds over here, right? So this is kind of the good credit or the excellent. Because here, if the kids don't have any credit, acceptable is better than nothing. But you're really improving it when you're over in this area. But also, another thing about this is really and this kind of gets confusing, and because this is not something that is out there in the public, right? There's not like the credit card companies don't put this out because the credit card companies want you to use the credit card. They don't want you to put authorized users so that you can put add credit to people. The credit bureaus don't want you to do that, right? They want the person to apply for credit on their own, right? Because it gives an accurate scoring model. This is in a way we're kind of skirting the system in a way. Even if you have bad, poor credit, it's really what's happening with that card. So if that's a card that, because obviously if you have like 10 different credit cards, but you've only made them authorized user on one, they're really only getting the benefit of that one card. So so be thinking about, so it's really more about what you're doing with whatever you've made the person the authorized user on, right? So if you've given them a credit card and then all of a sudden you charge up that credit card and don't pay it, that's going to hurt them, right? If you if you run really high utilization on that card, right, because that's the only card they're on, that's going to hurt them. So be thinking about it more, not necessarily your own credit, but what's happening with whatever credit that you provided to them. If you're getting a card, make sure maybe that's a card that you don't do anything with, right? It's just a card you have opened, and you just leave open, and so that they get that good credit without you having to charge on that card. That would be more the way I would be thinking about the good enough credit for having an authorized user. Yep, Marina, co-signing can definitely ruin your credit. Yep, I believe, yes, this should be taught in schools. Let's see here. I hope I have it duplicated because I see Alan mentioned the Boost program again. What are the rewards on credit cards used for? Lynette asked that. So rewards on credit cards, all kinds of different things, right? There's all kinds of different rewards cards. And so I'll just tell you a reward card that I have. I have a Wells Fargo. I bank at Wells Fargo. I used to. Actually, I have a credit union account now. But I opened my credit card when I used to bank at Wells Fargo. And they have a credit card that gives me 2% cash back on whatever I buy. And that 2% is a reward, right? So I go and I buy something, and I buy, I go out to dinner, right? And the dinner is $100, right? I get $2 back. There's another card. I think is it the City Double Cash? Whereas I think you get 1% when you make the purchase and 1% when you pay. I don't know, but those are what they call cash back cards. There's other cards where you can get rewards, a Southwest or a lot of the airline cards. You make a purchase and you get a reward on you get rewards for the flights, right? So if on Southwest, Chase has the Southwest card. When you make a purchase and on an eligible expense, you get 2% towards your you get points that you can use for Southwest flights and then they a lot of times these reward cards will have different categories. Some categories you may get 1%, then they'll have other categories you get 2%, and then you'll have other categories that maybe sometimes they have a revolving category, like you're buying groceries, and this month groceries you get 5%, right? So they have different cards that revolve, which I mean not revolve like we talked about earlier, but the different categories that you buy revolve. There are other cards that have a certain category is high. And so to give you an example, if you guys have Sam's Clubs in your area, so Sam's Club, they have a MasterCard. And when you get their MasterCard and you get gasoline, the gasoline is 5%, I believe. If you get the Costco card, right, they're competitors. Costco has a 4% on gasoline with their card. So you can see that's, so like if you wanted to let's say you buy a lot of gas, right? For whatever reason, you have a delivery business, you buy a lot of gas. You may want to pick up the Sam's Club credit card and charge all your gas purchases on the Sam's Club credit card, because that's going to give you the highest rewards for that card. So those are the different, different rewards, and they change, and each card's a little bit different. And there's a whole industry. I mentioned, like where you could go, there's all kinds of different sites that are built on that. I mean, if you just put rewards credit cards and just put that into Google, it'll pop up. But you're going to see a lot of these sites that come up more frequently. Nerd Wallet is a big one. It allows you to compare all kinds of different credit cards, put in information about yourself, and you can see their number one excellent reward credit cards. Their number one card, the Wells Fargo Active Cash card. So I've done something right in life, because that was the card that I just mentioned that gives you the 2% back. But that's where you can find out. Let's see, these are all cards that give you cash back. Then let's see here. Oh, and then there's ones that here's one that gives you airline miles. This is excellent for airline miles. The Capital One Saver one. This is excellent for dining and groceries. You can see there's tons and tons of lists that you can go through. This is why we don't focus on any one card, because there's so many. And that you just got to go look them up and say, okay, what do I'm going to spend the most money on? Does that make sense? Really, for me, why do I have the Wells Fargo card? It's just easy just to get the 2%, right? So, and that's why I do it. I don't even mess around. I do have a Costco card because I shop at Costco. So I do try to put that in for the gasoline, but I didn't get it because for that. I just happened because I go to Costco, but that's really one a place I do shop a lot that I haven't got the card, but I have thought about it, is Walmart. So Walmart, I believe they have an introductory special if you guys shop at Walmart a lot. And I believe for the first year, in-store purchases, I don't know if you got to do it with the app. They changed it recently, but they give a 5% bonus, a 5% back on any Walmart. And of course, Walmart tends to be a pretty cheap place to shop to begin with, right? So that's a pretty good thing. What they after that first year, it reverts to doing it online, right? And so it's only your online purchases. Another one that's very similar to that is the Amazon Prime card. If you join Amazon and you're a Prime member, right? So you're paying, I don't even know what it is now, something like $150 a year. But if you are going to get Prime, right, you get free deliveries and everything like that. They have access to the Prime card, and the Amazon Prime card gives you 5% back. You can see it just goes on and on depending on where you shop. I've said too much. Anyway, so let's see. Rachel says honor secure interconnection. Yes, you should not do financial transactions like over at the local Starbucks, because people make sure that you have a secure line. Brittany mentioned, speaking of special financing, check with your card. You may need to call to make sure your payments are being allocated towards the promotional financing. Hey, that's a great deal, right? Because some people, there's these promotional deals on credit cards, like, hey, I'm gonna, I see that. I just happen to have a Lowe's credit card. It's a store card. I could only buy from stuff at Lowe's on it, and I see they have this special to where if you buy, you have 60 months, or not 60 months, 60 days or 3 months to pay or something like that, right? So if I wanted to make a big purchase, I can actually extend those payments out. So you have to be watching those things to make sure that when you're paying them, that those payments, and this is not really on credit cards, but it is credit. So it is a similar thing I wanted to mention. But a lot of times, if you go get furniture from these stores, they'll have these deals where you can buy furniture and it's basically no money down, pay in 18 months or pay by 18 months. Make sure that you get that paid off, not even 1 day later than that 18 months. Pay it a month earlier just to make sure, because what happens is a lot of times in those situations, they have all these clauses. This is one of the problems, they entice you in to get you in, because they know some people, they're going to go over that 18 months. And what they'll do is they'll charge you retroactive interest to day one. Even though you've been paying, you may owe very little. They'll charge you retroactive interest and really sock it to you, right? And their interest is much higher than it would have been if you just would have bought on the credit card. So make sure that anytime you're doing any type of special promotion and buying on credit, that you're understanding what the rules are. You're making sure you comply with the rules so that you get the deal that you think you're getting, that you believe you're getting. So Don asked, what is a Vantage score? So Vantage score is just another scoring model. So Vantage Score is, I believe, it may be something that is it's a combination of, I want to say it was TransUnion and Equifax, but all it is it's a competitor to FICO. And so Credit Karma doesn't want to pay FICO to have the main score, so they use the Vantage Score. So they've worked out a deal. So it's a different scoring model, but it gives you a very similar score to what FICO would give, and it's close enough, and it still gives you the things that you need to know to be able to improve your score. Payment history, all those things that we talked about, utilization and everything. So it's good enough, right? And so if you see on the FICO score that you're excellent, chances are you're going to be excellent on FICO as well. So that's all the Vantage Score is. It's just a different scoring model. Let's see. Daniela mentions that she loves the Discover Secured card. Let's see. Is being an authorized user on 2 different accounts a good thing? It could be a good thing, right? Because that would be giving you 2 different accounts, right? And as an authorized user, right, you're getting 2 different lines of credit that are being shown open. And really, I was going to say, like I mentioned before, there's no hard and fast rule on these things, right? So, but if those 2 lines of credit are being open, they're being, low utilization, all the stuff that we're talking about, the fact that you have more than one should improve your credit and provide you better credit quicker. So a bank that has only got 2 main offices but none anywhere else, how is that considered to be a corporate chain? I don't know, Don, what you're referencing there. I don't know. Almost all banks, even credit unions, are corporations. They do that to protect themselves from liability. But I don't know if they're a chain. And there's even banks, that don't have physical locations. Like Ally Bank, right? That they're also gigantic banks, even though they don't have physical locations. Now Daniela, I don't know what she was mentioning. I did 1, points went up. 2, not much change. Do this. So I don't know if she was applying or what she was doing there. But let's see here. I'm getting here to the end, guys. Can't co-signing hurt our own credit? Really, co-signing, how it's going to hurt your own credit is if that person that you signed that doesn't pay. There is the potential that it would hurt your credit, obviously, if a hard inquiry is pulled. So there's a little hit, but that's, in the grand scheme of things, that's generally going to be minor. Really, the hurt to your own credit from co-signing will be from somebody not paying. I mean, if you don't have very much credit or you're maxed out on everything else, and then you add, you co-sign as well, I mean, obviously, if there's very little room, or, it shows that you have, you've signed this gigantic loan, yeah, maybe you won't be extended credit on something else. But those are very rare instances. Mostly the way you're going to get hurt on co-signing is if somebody that you co-signed for, right, does not pay the loan for you. And using a friend as an authorized user is great. So Daniela, I mean, it does not have to be a child. If a friend wants to do that for you, that's their business. I think I've gotten through all the questions. I know I've kept you longer. I'm going to turn it over to Lewis now so that he can close. I'll throw up my email address one last time here so that you guys have it. And if there's any questions that come up later on, feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to answer anything. That's what I'm here for. So thank you very much. You guys have been great. Thank you for staying around late. And take it away, Lewis, if you're still around.
Thank you so much. I am sure everybody appreciates this so much, all the information. I'm going to slip back real quick. And before everyone runs off, could you please do us a huge favor and fill out our survey? This is something that's very important for us. This really gets us the information, knowing what you guys liked, what you guys didn't like. So please, it's very, very important. You can just follow the web link or just click the link above and just sign it up. We really would appreciate that. Our next webinar is going to be April 18th, which is going to be Financial Wellness for Tenants, Budgeting and Saving, presented by Marie Bonneville, a tribal housing and education consultant. Marie also worked for the Native Learning Center a few years ago, so this should be an excellent course for those who are interested. You can access any of our recorded webinars anytime through our Cathedra online. We have the last 18 months, I believe, are available to listen to. You can check them out directly on our website at nativelearningcenter.com. You can also check out all of our upcoming events on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Twitter. You also can check out the Hobothanga Native American podcast that we have available also on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. Once again, thank you so much for coming for this lovely webinar. We really appreciate it, and we hope you have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you all later.